We've essentially defeated the military. We'll see what happens. We're working on a deal. And if that happens, fine. If it doesn't happen, that's okay too. We'll do it the other way. But the economy is unbelievable. We just hit another stock market high today, all-time high, 71 times. In the short period that I've been here for the second term, 71 times we've been at a new high. They're all setting records.
President Trump not giving up on a deal with Iran, even as new attacks complicate the path forward. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Brian Brenberg, along with my co-host Taylor Riggs, Jerry Willis, Jackie DeAngelis, and with us for the hour, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you guys.
Well, investors toggling between diplomatic hope and a ceasefire that's been more fire than cease lately. Overnight, U.S. and Iranian forces exchanged new drone and missile strikes, raising questions about whether negotiations can stay on track. Oil climbing on that news, but the president says it's a temporary disruption.
But what we will have is we'll have a situation where Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
And that's really more important than all of it. We want low gasoline. You know, I had it down to $1.85 a gallon. I was in Iowa just before the war started, and I had it down to $1.85 a gallon in various parts of the country. And it'll be back there again at some point.
All right, DeRoy, president says deal's not dead. Economy's coming back. But I don't know if everyone's feeling as groovy about that as he is. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for President Trump to express some empathy about people who are paying way more per gallon for gasoline than they were certainly before this conflict. There is some pain, and he ought to acknowledge that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I also think it would be very helpful for him when he says Iran can't get a nuclear weapon. I think we all agree on that, but I think he needs to explain what the stakes are and how serious this is. He ought to talk about some of the specific details associated with uranium enrichment. For example, uranium naturally is about 0.7% when you take it out of the ground.
Okay.
In order to produce energy, you go up to 3 to 5% enrichment, okay? The Iranians say, hey, we have a peaceful program. We just want to use this for electricity. No big deal. They're enriching at 60%. They're now at 12x what they need to produce energy. That doesn't sound peaceful to me.
Right.
In order to go from 60 to 90%, which is weapons grade, they only need to do 1% more enrichment than they've done so far. So this is scary stuff. And I think those specific details will give the American public a sense of how urgent this is, why this is so important, and I think will give them a greater sense of patience and give the president more time to get this settled. If people see how serious this is and how close the Iranians are to getting atomic weapons, maybe as many as 11, with, I'm sure, disastrous consequences.
You know, that's interesting, Jackie. Do you think it's time for President Trump to come out and kind of lay it out for the American people? We keep hearing like a deal might be within a day or a week. The economy's great. But it always feels like that next week, right? It always feels like that next day. Does he need to kind of level set in terms of the message to America about what we're doing, why it's going the way it's going, and what it means that we're handling it this way?
It's an interesting question, and I hear you, DeRoy. I've definitely heard on our network people come and explain the enrichment issue and the percentages and why it doesn't make sense with respect to what the Iranians are doing. But I think even if the president, shouted that from the hilltops, the Democrats would still just beat him down for this war, no matter what he said. I mean, they don't want to hear it. It's Trump. He's doing something. It is in the best interest of our country and the world, arguably, and they still don't want to hear it because they have Trump derangement syndrome. So I think he's doing his best on the messaging. I don't think, Brian, that he can go that granular into the detail because, when you come on and you speak to the American public or you put something on Truth Social, you're broadcasting it to everybody, including your enemy. So some of those cards need to be held closer to the vest by the president, and I think that we ought to trust him. Do I like that this is dragging on? No, absolutely not. But the only thing I can do is have faith in him and that this mission is worthy and that his negotiating tactics will either work or he will then resort to the alternative, which would be more military pressure. But I want to pivot for a minute, so bear with me and give me some grace to talk a little bit about oil prices.
Okay.
Now we're getting back into the territory that I don't love, that over $95 close to $96.
Your was 100, so we're still under your
Yeah, but I don't like getting near my I liked being at 89.
Below the
I felt like I had a nice buffer there. And so what happened overnight, I think, is significant. These Iranian strikes on the Kuwait airport and also in Bahrain. You guys know I lived in Bahrain. It's a very sleepy town, I think, island rather. But I think about living there and what it would be like to have, missiles being launched by Iran. And it's not only terrifying, but it just flies in the face of anything that little island kingdom is at all. So I can imagine the disruption that it's causing. And on the Kuwait side, the Iranians are showing that they don't care about civilian targets here, which is why you're seeing oil prices ratchet up a little bit. There's also this report from The Hill that Marco Rubio is talking about the Supreme Leader, that he's increasingly engaging and kind of actively participating in these talks, despite the fact that nobody's seen him. Let's assume for a moment that the Supreme Leader is still alive. My guess would be, as the Supreme Leader, not the military aspect of it, not anything else, as a delegate, he wants to hold on to power. So it would be in his best interest to try to negotiate in some way and keep whatever semblance of power that he has together. But what we've been saying lately is that the IRGC, they are the ones moving forward with the military. They are the ones super, super hard line, not looking at the big picture, just having one objective in mind, which is we want to destroy America. I think the Supreme Leader's stuck in a difficult spot because he's losing control of the IRGC and not able to kind of bridge the gap between the diplomacy that he understands he needs to keep a regime together and what the hardliners want to see. And I think that's part of some of the difficulty in this negotiation. Now, on the flip side of this, on the oil side, there's some domestic reasons we're seeing prices up too. API comes out with a report about how much we draw down on crude. Taylor, I know you've talked about this, and Dagan has as well. It was a big drawdown, almost 7 million barrels. It was the 7th straight week in a row of drawdowns. It was twice this week of what they were expecting. So they were expecting like 3 and change, and it was practically double that. Gasoline building, that's positive instead of going down. But the oil story right now for us is, yes, we're pumping a lot, but these straight disruptions are still a problem. And the president sees all this. I think he understands time is certainly of the essence, but he needs to figure out a way to wrap this up, despite the fact that they are completely dysfunctional over there.
Jerry, you got that oil and gas story, but gosh, you look at other parts of this economy.
Hey.
And it looks pretty darn good. The president said it's unbelievable. You can choose a different adjective if you want to, but there's some strength here.
There is some strength here. And we've even got gas prices down week to week, which is a nice thing. I mean, it's not where I want it to be.
Still pretty high, but not at their highs, right?
But ADP came out today. Looks like the jobs market is continuing. The number for May, 122,000, that was higher than we expected. Americans are continuing to spend regardless of what you say about whether they're insolvent or not. They continue powering the economy along. And by the way, we would like the thank you very much letter from, the New York Stock Exchange or Washington for keeping this economy going. We've done our part. What are you guys doing? That's what I would say. But, look, if you're going to complain about what's going on, maybe you're looking at the markets today, Brian,
red.
And you're saying, oh, there's red. Okay. The Dow has been up for 9 consecutive days of gains, longest winning streak in a year. S&P up 3.5% over 9 days, people. That's like a year, okay? That's a great year. All 3 indexes closing at records 5 days in a row. Hey, I'm pretty fat and happy over here, I got to tell you.
I hear your Dow, and I raise you an S&P winning streak. Also, Jerry, that we're on. We're not likely going to get it. We're down 0.5% on the S&P. So we've been up for 9 straight days. If we go up for 10 straight days, the longest winning streak since 1995. Nice. Even if we don't, we're at 10 consecutive weekly gains. That's the longest winning streak since 1985. Oh. So if you told me that the market's been up for 10 straight weeks and we're having the best run since the 80s, I'd be like, are you nuts? What word are you talking about? Yes, the market is not the economy, but I want to build on what Jerry was talking about with the economy. Within ADP, the most added jobs were in businesses that were super tiny. You fewer than 20 employees, you added 50,000 jobs. So, Brian, what I like about that, it's not the big evil corporations. It's the tiny mom and pop guys that are hiring right now. That makes me happy given small businesses really are the backbone of this country. Also importantly within ADP, because we've talking about oil prices, wage growth. So wages, if you stayed in your job, were still up 4.4%. If you jumped jobs, you got a wage hike of about 6.5%. That number is important because with rising inflation, we want to make sure that your real wage, your take-home pay after inflation, still stays positive. We've talked recently how it started to dip into negative territory. Also, we talked about the ISM manufacturing yesterday, huge highest in 4 years. The services number today, also really good. Factory orders rising faster than expected. So the economic data points show really, really good signs. Brian,
Don't do bad news. No bad news.
I have a bone to pick with you.
Oh, good.
I asked you for a comment yesterday, and you said you were just waiting for a chart of the day to react.
And I'm waiting today, and I still haven't gotten one. And we're already 10 minutes into the show.
Boom, pull up my chart of the day. We have a new acronym.
That's just
Jackie,
S&P
the Mag 7 was so last year. No one cares. Everyone's talking about the Parabolic 7.
Parabolic.
In yellow. SanDisk, Marvell, Micron, Intel, Dell, AMD.
Well,
They are now 8% of the S&P 500 are like the memory stocks that we're calling the Parabolic 7, outperforming the Mag 7 and outperforming even the chip makers that we talked about. Remember the Philly Semiconductor Index?
Yeah, I remember
that we
that.
were all astounded. It's been up 70%. Basically, this is a little bit of the concern about how concentrated this rally has become, Brian.
I think the word parabolic's not as good of a name as magnificent. They should have come up with a different name, like the Stupendous 7.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay.
That's a better
Alliteration's usually a
adjective.
good thing.
You're going to tell us about Marvell anyway. You just mentioned it, and you're going to tell us about Marvell. So why don't you do that?
All right. So what did you quiz me on yesterday? What was it was like a $250 billion market cap, but Jensen Huang says it's the next $1 trillion
Yes.
company. So I raise you your 33% gain yesterday, and then I give you another 5 to 6% gain today because people still believe that if you're a $250 billion company, but the smartest guy in the room says you're worth $1 trillion, you've got to go higher. And yes, they're part of the Parabolic 7.
So what was Gasparino's problem with that yesterday?
Journal article.
Circular financing.
Yeah.
So he's saying Nvidia's got money in there. They're talking their own book. Do you get worried about that?
But also
Yeah.
the
You get worried
journal
about
article
that?
that you brought up about costs coming down
Yes.
eventually.
Yeah, Andy
Prices
Kessler.
dropping. And so
and they can't
long
buy
term, can they be this company? Maybe they hit that mark as Jensen Huang said so, as long as pricing stays high. But then ultimately, I think his thesis was they would be set up to fall eventually.
Right. The cost per token comes way down, and that diffuses it, which is good. That means it's easier to access throughout the economy. That's how you get growth, but it means these guys don't make the profits.
You said that these companies invest in each other. To what degree does that eventually run into an antitrust
Yeah.
problem?
Wow.
Is that a concern at all?
good question.
Is antitrust only though if you buy it? Is there an antitrust if you just inject liquidity?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
question.
it's kind of like vendor financing. I'm not that worried about it because these guys run on each other's components. But I mean, it is a valuation question, right? And especially when they're talking up one of their
Well, he also brought up
investments.
what was happening in the run up to the 2000 problem that we saw, which was that the debt being used to finance some of the objectives then became a problem. And we've been talking about credit problems. And you say to yourself, if these are all circularly intertwined and one of them overdoes it, right? Or over leverages,
Right.
and then all of a sudden has a massive debt problem, how does that impact the others on the board?
So far, it's been a lot of cash
Right?
and equity. It's not been a lot of debt, with a few exceptions.
Can I say just one thing here, which
Yes.
is that remember when we used to talk about these stocks can't go forever. This Magnificent Seven, it's got to end sometime. Well, guess what? We have a whole new group of stocks, and I just want to make the point: if you're thinking about the markets right now and you think 9 days of gains here, all-time gains in some of these indexes. You got to be in the market to get the benefits. And you never know when those 9 days are coming, right? So you have to play. You have to pay to play. You have to be in the market.
Jerry's got her chips on the
Got to
table.
be in it to win it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like the
so-
lottery.
Nicely put.
you.
Parabolic 7. I think we can work on that.
So you liked the chart of the day. You're telling me you liked it.
I didn't. The chart was fine. The naming was not great. So let's work on that for the next chart.